Hey, it's Coach Hirsch. Today we're going to talk about supply. We've already covered demand, which we started off with because it's a little bit easier to understand because we're all demanders or consumers. We know what it means to want to buy more of something when it's cheaper, and we know that we're probably not going to buy as much of something when it's more expensive. So supply, we kind of shift gears a little bit. First of all, we want to define supply. Supply is the different quantities of a good that sellers are willing and able to sell or produce at different prices. So just like demand, there has to be that willing and able component to create either demand or supply. I may be willing to sell you something, but I'm just not able to do it. So therefore, there's no supply created. I also may be able to sell you something, but I'm not willing to do it. And once again, there's no supply created. So once willing and able are there, or the willingness and the ability are there to sell something, then it's created. What is the law of supply? There is a direct or positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. If you remember demand is an inverse relationship. As I just mentioned a few minutes ago, the more expensive something is, the less we want of it. The less expensive something is, the more we want of it. So it's inverse. Supply is a direct relationship. As price increases, the quantity producers make increases. And as price falls, the quantity producers make falls. Why? Because at higher prices, profit-seeking firms have an incentive to produce more. So think of it this way. Let's say I have 10 concert tickets, and I'm selling them all for $100. And you come up to me and you say, hey, Coach, can I buy one ticket? All I've got is $50. Maybe out of the kindness of my heart, I'll go, I tell you what, I'll give you one ticket for $50, but I'm not going to sell you any more than that. The next day you come back to me and you say, hey, Coach, I've got $900. Can I get the rest of the tickets? And I go, here you go. Here's the other 9 tickets. Why? Because the more expensive the ticket got, the more I was willing to supply. So you're able to pay me more. I'm going to supply you more. You're going to pay me less. I'm going to supply less. Another example would be mowing lawns. If you think about the neighborhood here, how many lawns would you mow if you owned a lawnmower and people were going to pay you? Well, if we look at it this way, and we price this out at 1, 5, 20, 50, and 100, and 1,000. Chances are at $1, maybe you'd mow one lawn out of the kindness of your heart. I don't even know if you would do that, or I don't know if I would do that. $5, maybe you mow a couple. $20, maybe you 3 or 4. $50, you're starting to mow 5, 10, 20. $100, you're starting to mow maybe 50 or 100. $1,000, you'll mow every lawn in the neighborhood. So the point being is that as the price goes up, you're willing to supply more of your labor. If the price is cheap, you're not going to supply as much labor. You'd rather stay at home, watch TV. It's not worth your time. So, just like demand, we have the supply schedule over here on the left, and we can see that direct relationship. At $1, we're going to supply 10. At $5, we're going to supply 50. Go ahead and draw this graph in your notes, just like we did with demand. We can see over here, we have on the one axis, we have the price, and then the other axis, we have quantity. It sets up the exact same way as demand. As we can see here, we plot out our points at our price levels at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we can see our quantity at 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. So notice that this is upward sloping now compared to our demand curve, which was downward sloping. And again, it has to do with that direct relationship. Now, what if, for whatever reason, there are new and more productive milking machines? What do you think is going to happen? Well, if we think of more productivity, we can think that we're going to be able to create more milk. If we're going to be able to create more milk, what's going to happen to the supply? Supply is going to go up. Exactly. So we can see here that now we're able to supply more. At 1, we used to supply 10, but now we can supply 30. At 2, we could supply 20, now we could supply 40, and so on and so forth. So what do you think is going to happen to our curve? Well, it's just like demand. If it's something other to do with price, it's a shift of the curve. And we have a shift to the right, which is an increase. And we can see now at that price level, 1 now represents 30, 2, 40, 3, 50, and so on. That's a good way to check your work, too, if you draw a curve. You don't always have to write out the numbers, but in this particular case, it could help you if you're a little bit confused, like I'm not quite sure if I'm drawing it the right direction. Label those each axis, and that'll help you. So we have an increase in supply here. Prices didn't change, but there's more milk produced. Now, what if the price for dairy cows increases drastically? So if you're a farmer and the price of cows goes up, what do you think that's going to do to your supply of milk? Well, the supply of milk is probably going to go down. So we can see here now on a supply schedule that at 1, we used to supply 10, but now we supply 0. And at $5, we used to supply 50, and now we supply 30. So what do you think is going to happen to our curve? It's going to shift left. You got it. So we can see now when we plot our new points, they match up again to the demand schedule. the supply schedule. So we have a decrease in supply. Price didn't change, but there is less milk produced. What if there's an increase in the number of milk producers? Well, we have more producers. If we have more producers, then supply is going to go up, right? So all of these things have to do with change in supply. None of these have to do with price, so there's always going to be a shift in the curve, just like demand. If demand had to do with price, it was movement along the curve. If it had to do with something other than price, it was a shift of the curve. Supply is no different. Price change, movement along the curve. Something other than price, shift of the curve. There are 5 shifters of supply, and we're not going to ask you to necessarily memorize these, but if you kind of have a general idea of what affects supply, then it'll make it a little bit easier for you when you're solving some of these problems. Number 1, government action, excise tax and subsidies. We'll come back to that. Number 2, expectations of future profit. 3, technology. 4, inputs or the cost of resources. 5, the number of sellers. So government action, excise taxes would be something obviously that the government would levy, and it would cause the price of something to go up, and therefore the suppliers could react by not supplying as many. And then subsidies are almost like a bonus that the government pays when they want to increase supply in the market. So they can, if they increase the subsidy, they can increase supply. If they take the subsidy away, they decrease the supply. So remember that, because you'll see that term again. Expectations of future profit. This one sometimes students get hung up on. Remember, there's expectations for both demand and supply. But on the supply side, let's say I knew that those concert tickets I was telling you about earlier, I was going to sell them for $100, but next week is the concert, and somebody told me that, hey, listen, if you wait till the day before the concert, you can probably get $200 a ticket. Well, now I'm not going to sell them anymore. I'm going to wait till next week because I'm expecting I can make more money. So that would be expectations of future profit. Technology, just as it sounds. Inputs, the cost of resources. So if I'm making pizza, if the cost of cheese goes up, the cost of tomatoes goes up, that's going to make my pizzas more expensive. I'm probably going to supply less. And conversely, if the price of cheese and tomatoes go down, I may increase my supply of pizza. And then lastly, number of sellers, just as it sounds. Do we have more people selling a similar product? Remember, bottom line is changes in price don't shift the curve. It only causes movement along the curve. These shifters up here shift the curve left or right. Practice questions. Which of the following will cause the quantity supplied for milk to decrease? C, a decrease in the price of milk, right? Quantity supplied has to do with price, so that will be a decrease in the price of milk. This is a practice sheet you can get from me or Mrs. Rosenfeld, and you can answer these problems. This is kind of in the format of what your quiz and your test will look like, so be sure to do these when you get a chance. Have a good day.